Chapter 11: Drugs and Mystic Experience. In our modern age, countless numbers of seekers have turned to drugs as a possible inroad to mystical experience. They have been sincere individuals who honestly believed a greater awareness or higher state of consciousness could be attained chemically. For untold ages, man has experimented with compounds in an effort to find a master key which would transform him from man to God. Chemical samadhi has yet to be achieved. However, let us not automatically condemn drug usage without first offering some evidence, gleaned from the mystics, which supports the contention that drugs cannot give us God realization. In order to understand the problem clearly, the writer has talked to literally scores of young people who have used drugs as a vehicle toward God realization, in addition to having taken psychedelics himself in his younger days. In researching this topic carefully, and in extensively studying the writings and teachings of the world's leading Illuminati, certain fundamental differences between psychedelic and mystical experience became obvious. 7 such differences are noted, which should suffice for any sincere seeker of truth, although there may be many others. 1. Mystic experience is the same all the time. When one studies the great mystics and saints, one finds that they all describe the same stages of inner bliss. They are not in disagreement with one another. For example, if each of us went out of a closed-in room and then came back to that room to describe what we had seen, we would agree, in essence, with the nature of the world outside the room. We might emphasize different aspects of the outside world, but each of us would know exactly what the other was talking about. All mystic experience is similar. We must all traverse the same road to God realization, and the signposts along the way are the same for all. Guru Arjan Dev says, "O listen thou to the true testimony of the saint, for uttereth he what he beholdeth with his own eyes." And Guru Nanak says, "In the beginning was truth, through the ages was truth, now is truth, and in the future too shall remain truth." But when we examine the nature of drug experiences, we find that everyone is having a different type of experience. No two people necessarily see the same thing within, nor do they even have a similar kind of experience. In fact, sometimes their experiences are so totally different from one another as to make one wonder if they even took the same kind of drug. This is in direct contradiction to mystic experience, which adamantly proclaims that the road to God is clearly marked. Every step of the way, the mystic practitioner knows the sounds, colors, and sights of the regions he must cross in order to reach the highest Lord. This leads to the next point. 2. Mystic experience is repeatable. In our scientific laboratories, an experiment is not considered valid unless it can be repeated and thus verified. For if a scientist claims to have discovered some scientific truth, but it can never again be reproduced by anyone else, it is only his opinion we have to take at face value, and no scientist would accept such proof. Similarly, mystics tell us that if we have pierced the veil of ignorance, we can at will ascend or descend in consciousness. To put it another way, what point would there be in having some kind of inner bliss if it was a one-time experience, never to be repeated? On the contrary, mystics tell us that if we have conquered a higher region of consciousness, we can re-enter it at our pleasure. Drug experiences, however, cannot be repeated. We must take dose after dose of the drug, but we can never be certain that we will ever have the same experience again. For instance, we may feel we have seen Christ in some inner vision. Assuming for the moment that we would know him if we saw him, we may never have an experience like that again. We seem to be at the mercy of the drug as to what we shall experience. Many persons have reported some kind of elevating inner vision and have tried in vain to have that experience again. 3. Superconscious experience is within the control of the practitioner. As any proficient meditator can tell you, true inner ascent is under the control of the meditator. He learns to take his consciousness up and enjoy the bliss of inner regions. Then, when he wishes, he returns to inhabit this body on the physical plane. For, after all, we have a good deal of control of ourselves during our waking state. If we have attained superconsciousness, we should have even more control over ourselves. We should not be at the mercy of some external force. For example, some people have mistakenly become involved in psychic phenomena, such as projecting their astral body from place to place. They never go in and up, but rather travel from place to place near or about their home. They are at the mercy of the silver cord which binds the astral to the physical body, and they must return to the body whenever the pull of the cord becomes irresistible. In short, the experience is beyond their full control. Saints have instructed mankind regarding control. They have told us that the closer we are to our true source, that is, God, the more we have control over ourselves. Thus, here on the physical plane, we are victims of the mind and senses and have little control over ourselves. As we rise within, we become master of our senses, master of the mind, and, finally, a pure, divine emanation of the Lord, the soul. With so-called psychedelic drugs, there is no control over the experience. We cannot come off a drug high by exerting our will. We are at the mercy of the drug and can return to a normal state of mind only when the drug wears off and our nervous system normalizes. Since the control being exercised is external to the individual, it can hardly be called a self-controlled experience. 4. Corroboration is not found in the writings of the saints. For spiritual aspirants, there are countless systems outlined by spiritual adepts of varying degrees of attainment for the realization of God. Some of these systems take us higher than others, but all give some type of mystic revelation. Nowhere in any of these teachings does one find anything other than condemnation for drug usage. Gurus universally consider drugs to be the height of illusion, or Maya. These drugs confuse our already too confused perception of reality, leading the individual to feel he has attained something, when, in fact, he has attained nothing. 5. Mind-manifesting drugs contradict mystic purpose. Users of psychedelics freely admit that they believe the drugs to be mind-manifesting or mind-expanding substances. Every system of yoga proclaims the necessity of subduing and transcending the mind. How can we rise above mind consciousness if we are constantly expanding the mind? Do we feed the enemy to increase his power to resist? 6. Mystic experience transforms the practitioner into a better person. Ramakrishna, a famous Indian yogi, was once asked, "Sir, if by chance a fool were to stumble into superconsciousness, what would happen?" Ramakrishna replied, "Follow him, brother, for he has now become a very wise man." You see, if we have become enlightened inwardly to any degree, our outer behavior reflects the inner change. Having partaken of higher truth, how can we be the same old fool we were before? A man steeped in inner revelation generates peace and tranquility all around him. He is a source of strength and happiness to others, and becomes, as Christ put it, a light shining before men. On the other hand, look at psychedelic drug users. Observe their personalities closely. They speak of love, but have not learned its simplest meaning. They often rely on others to provide for their basic needs and seldom contribute to the uplift of humanity. They have done little to improve themselves in any way, yet they feel they should be models for others. Any objective observer, trusting his own intellect, can clearly come to his own conclusions. See if the psychedelic drug user is becoming a more sensitive, loving, worthwhile, and nobler human being. See if he is more self-actualizing, more peaceful rather than drugged, more creative, more realized. If God can be found in a pill, then perhaps he is not worth realizing. 7. God realization is a long and gradual process. We spend 16 years in school to gain a college BA. We take it for granted that many years of struggle and study are necessary to attain a position of worldly responsibility. Yet we think that God realization can be obtained overnight or through a fast-acting chemical reaction. It contradicts the very basis of reason to believe we can attain the highest consciousness with less effort than is necessary for a worldly education. Surely the knowledge which surpasses all other knowledge must require arduous effort. The Bhagavad Gita says that perhaps 1 in a million will walk the razor's edge, the mystic path. Both simple logic and the teachings of the saints invalidate the use of artificial substances as a means of attaining God realization. History stands witness to the conduct of saints, and nowhere do we read of them being drug users. Perhaps the misconception arose in the West due to the experience many young people have when they visit India. Here they see many so-called yogis, perhaps better named misguided yogis, who perform various tricks or penances and are supported by society. Many of them smoke charas, hashish, or use other chemical substances. These yogis have a great influence on touring young people and often initiate them for a few rupees. It provides a comfortable income with no responsibility. Unfortunately, many tourists carry away impressions that these men are mystics of some type. Perhaps these men might indeed experience some drug-induced hallucinations, but you will notice that they rarely have a serious following, nor are they able to provide for themselves without relying on charity. They have found that this type of yoga is a good way to make money from the easily duped passerby. There is a saying in India that there are more gurus than disciples. We can become a great mystic in a moment by putting on some unusual clothing and preying on the gullibility of the population. It takes only a moment to become such a teacher, while it takes a lifetime of effort to become a true disciple.